I want to show you. I told you I have screenshots of so many of these posts from 2020. I want to show you some of them because this, more than anything else, social media is what red pilled me. People were so psycho during 2020 on social media. And that was, for many of us in lockdown, that was all we had. We weren't going out and talking with people or seeing people. So our public forum at the time was social media. And this is the thing that made me conservative. So after George Floyd died and the video came out, we all remember the rioting, the looting, the crazy protests, which, were supposedly in accordance with public health, but then going outside for any other reason besides protesting against racism was being a COVID denier, but protesting racism was in accordance with public health. Got it. But we remember all of those crazy protests and rioting and looting. And then these people who I went to high school and college with were posting the most unhinged, nonsensical, entitled, wagging the finger posts about white supremacy. Here's just one of them. And let's laugh at this because it really is deserving of laughter. So this is someone who I went to school with. Ready? The end of patriarchal domination and the end of white supremacy are absolutely inextricable. White supremacy is also a losing game for white women. This is why solidarity in politics and feminism are truly an imperative. There's no feminism that excludes or decenters the specifically racialized experiences of patriarchy of BIPOC women. The proximity to white male privilege that white womanhood affords is frankly ephemeral and a convenient farce propagated to maintain complacency. A white heteropatriarchy is only interested in protecting itself and its capital. While white women fall into that second category, they're also protected. And when they stop proving valuable or try to disrupt the system to any extent, they're cast aside and demonized. So here's how I look at a rant like that. If that made sense to you, you got to get your brain checked. If that didn't make sense to you, then that's a good sign that you may be a clear thinker. I said this recently on the show. I read some DEI statement that was talking about, putting as many isms and ists and all these crazy constructed academic words into one sentence. And I read that and I said just what I said now. If that doesn't make sense to you, you are told that you're doing something wrong. You're told that you're insufficiently anti-racist. You're insufficiently, anti-patriarchy. You haven't done the work. You haven't done a reconnaissance mission on your psyche to exact all of the elements in your brain of your racism and your sexism and your latent bigotry. That's what you're told, that if you don't understand that, then that's your problem. But it's literally the opposite. If you don't understand that, that means that you're a clear thinker, because that makes no damn sense. But I was seeing this. I can't emphasize this enough. I was on social media. I was seeing, and you guys who are watching may be thinking, well, actually, none of you are thinking this because you went through this and this was not just one person. This was so many people on social media posting these kinds of things. And that girl happened to be Black, but there were all of these white women, and this is what drove me nuts. There were all of these white people who were trying to be so, what's the word? I'm forgetting it. It means performative, virtue signaling. And they're posting, these Maoist self-criticism sessions for their white privilege. And they're like, I, as a white woman, I am listening right now. I am recognizing that I'm racist. It's like, come on. We should all listen, of course. And there were some things, and keyword some, that came out during that BLM summer that were good and that were deserving of our notice. For instance, I think one positive thing that came out of that is that police now wear body cameras. Only some police departments prior to 2020 required body cameras. To my knowledge, it is now the case that most police departments in the country have body cameras. Okay, that's a thing that we should listen to. That's a thing that we should change, I'm all for appropriate listening. But these white women that would get up there and, apologize for having white skin, come on. Absolutely ridiculous. Remember the black square? Do you remember that on social media? By the way, remember when Nancy Pelosi and all of the Democrats in Congress, they wore like the African scarf and then they kneeled for 8 minutes to honor George Floyd? The amount of irrationality during that time, we need to keep a chronicle of it and then make it a sitcom. It was just so funny. Remember the black square? You had to post the black square on Instagram to prove to everyone that you were anti-racist. And then after the black square thing, this happened. This is delete the square. No more black square. This is a screenshot from the time. Delete the square. The Instagram algorithm is merging Blackout Tuesday posts with Black Lives Matter hashtag. This is obstructing vital information. I saw a post like that. I saw other posts like, don't post the black square, you're just being performative. So everything you did was wrong. This was the tornado of craziness that we were all living in. I'll just show you a few more for the sake of old times. This was another post. Someone put on Instagram that you were being violent if you weren't continuing to post about Black Lives Matter, because that was one of the things. People would go after you on social media, people my age. If you were not posting for Black Lives Matter, if you weren't posting infographics about police brutality or about mass incarceration or about, the school to prison pipeline or all of the things that they demanded that you post about, then it means that you were being racist, and indeed it means you were being violent. You can see here that that girl said that you were being, quote, violent. And so I bring up that post specifically because posts like that marked such a turning point in the psyche of Julie Hartman. Because I looked at that and I said, wait a minute. People are throwing around these terms like violence so superfluously and so recklessly. That is not what violence means. Violence is violence. Punching someone in the face or shooting someone is violence. Not posting on Instagram, you could argue that it's insensitive. You could argue that person is reneging on their responsibilities in the moment. You could say a lot of things, but it's certainly not violent. And so that was a moment for me, and I think this is where language really started to become distorted, where now it's just kind of commonplace for all of us. We're so used to people saying, that they're offended by something innocuous. We're so used to people calling everything racist or everything violent or everything discrimination. We've become desensitized to it. But I want us to remember this moment because it was one of the most formative of my life. I was growing up during this time. I was becoming an adult. So I am really well poised to remember what life was like before then and then what life is like after then. And I can tell you from my memory that these terms started to become really twisted and really misused during Black Lives Matter. And what the post that you just saw is total proof. And so now we shouldn't be surprised when we see, for instance, I reported on this recently, in Illinois, they're trying to change right now the Abused and Neglected Child Reporting Act in the state of Illinois to say that a, quote, abused child is one whose parents deny them gender-affirming care. This is now mainstream. I said at the beginning of this episode, George Floyd changed the world and changed America because it made leftism leach into the mainstream. And one effect of that is that it led to people twisting language and twisting words and then making that a part of the law. And so now that the word abuse in the state of Illinois is again, the law thankfully hasn't been passed yet, but they're trying to get this law passed saying that the term abuse means that your parents don't give you gender affirming care. By the way, that term, even gender affirming care, is another example of the twisting of language. Gender affirming care is gender denying abuse. But all of that distortion, I'm telling you, it really became mainstream in this moment.